Once upon a time, in a small village deep in the heart of Africa, there lived a woman named Mama Nneka. She was known in the village as a hardworking woman who did everything she could to provide for her only daughter, Nneka. Mama Nneka's life had been filled with sorrow from the moment she lost her husband. He had died on the very night Nneka was born, leaving her to raise their baby alone. Without anyone to lean on, Mama Nneka did all sorts of menial jobs to take care of her daughter. She was especially known for going from house to house, cleaning for rich families in the nearby town. The job was tough, but Mama Nneka was determined to make sure that Nneka went to school and had a better life than she did. As the years passed, Nneka grew into a smart and beautiful young woman. She worked hard in school, and Mama Nneka saved every penny she earned from cleaning to send her daughter to the university. It was not easy. There were days when Mama Nneka barely ate, so that she could save money for Nneka's fees, textbooks, and other needs. Finally, the day came when Nneka was accepted into a prestigious university. Mama Nneka was overjoyed. She saw this as the beginning of a bright future for her daughter. With tears in her eyes, she blessed Nneka before she left for school, promising to keep working hard to support her. However, things started to change once Nneka got to the university. When Nneka arrived at the university, she was surrounded by many different students. Some were like her, from poor backgrounds, while others came from rich and influential families. At first, Nneka was focused on her studies, just as her mother had hoped. But it wasn't long before she began to feel ashamed of her background. She started making friends with the rich students. They wore the latest clothes, drove fancy cars, and spent money like it was nothing. Nneka had grown up in poverty, began to envy their lifestyle. She started pretending to be something she was not, lying to her new friends about her background. Whenever her mother called, Nneka would ignore the calls. If she was around her friends, she didn't want them to hear her speaking in their native language or asking about the village. Only when she was in her student lodge would she call her mother back. Even then, her conversations were short and she often sounded impatient. "Is everything alright, Nneka?" Mama Nneka would ask gently. "Yes, Mama. I am just busy with schoolwork," Nneka would reply, though deep inside she was embarrassed by her mother's simple life. Back in the village, Mama Nneka began to notice that her daughter was no longer the same. Calls became less frequent, and when she did manage to speak with Nneka, her daughter seemed distant. Mama Nneka grew worried, but tried to convince herself that Nneka was just busy with her studies. One day, after several weeks of not hearing from Nneka, Mama Nneka decided to visit her at the university. She saved up just enough money for transportation and made the long journey to the city. She didn't tell Nneka she was coming because she wanted to surprise her and see how she was doing. When Mama Nneka arrived at the university, she asked around for directions to her daughter's lodge. After walking from what seemed like hours, she finally found Nneka sitting outside with some of her rich friends. They were all laughing and talking about an upcoming party. Excited to see her daughter, Mama Nneka approached with a smile. "Nneka, my daughter," she called out happily. But to her shock, Nneka froze. She looked at her mother with wide eyes, as if seeing a stranger. Her friends turned to look at Mama Nneka, who was dressed in her simple village clothes, holding a small bag she had brought from home. One of the friends asked, "Nneka, who is this woman?" Without thinking, Nneka responded, "I don't know. She must be someone crazy from the village." Nneka's heart shattered. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her own daughter, the one she had sacrificed everything for, was denying her in front of her friends. Tears filled her eyes as she walked closer to Nneka. "Nneka, it's me, your mother," she said softly, reaching out to touch her. But Nneka stepped back, avoiding her mother's hand. "I don't know you. Please, leave me alone," she shouted, her voice filled with embarrassment and anger. Mama Nneka stood there, stunned as her daughter turned away from her. The rich friends laughed, thinking it was all a joke, but for Mama Nneka, the pain was too much to bear. Her heart was heavy. Without another word, she turned and walked away. She had come all this way to see her daughter, only to be treated like a stranger, like someone who didn't matter. The journey back to the village felt much longer than before, and with every step, Mama Nneka's heart ached more deeply. Back in the village, Mama Nneka could not stop crying. She wept for days, unable to understand how her own daughter could turn her back on her. She had given everything to make sure Nneka had a chance at a better life. And now that very life had taken Nneka away from her. The villagers tried to comfort her, but the pain in her heart was too deep. She stopped going to work, stopped eating, and spent her days alone in her small hut, mourning the loss of her daughter's love. The heartbreak eventually became too much for her frail body to bear. And after a few weeks, Mama Nneka passed away quietly in her sleep. Word of her death spread quickly through the village, and soon the news reached Nneka at the university. When Nneka heard the news of her mother's death, she was devastated. All the memories of her mother's love and sacrifice came flooding back, and she realized the terrible mistake she had made. In her pursuit of acceptance among the rich, she had lost the one person who loved her unconditionally. Nneka hurried back to the village for burial, but it was too late. Her mother had already been laid to rest. She stood by the grave, tears streaming down her face, crying out for forgiveness. "I am sorry, Mama. I am so sorry," she wept, kneeling by the grave. But no matter how much she cried, it could not bring her mother back. With her mother gone, Nneka's life quickly fell apart. She could no longer afford to pay her school fees, and without anyone to support her, she was forced to drop out of the university. The friends she had tried so hard to impress no longer wanted anything to do with her. She was alone, without her mother, without her education, and without the future her mother had worked so hard to give her. The end.